must mobilize for Palestine. Arms embargo now, arms embargo now, for our collective liberation. Stop arming genocide. We must end complicity in war crimes. Ceasefire now, ceasefire now, for Palestine's liberation. Stop arming genocide. We must mobilize for Palestine. Arms embargo now, arms embargo now, for our collective liberation. Stop arming genocide. We must end complicity in war crimes. Ceasefire now, ceasefire now, for Palestine's liberation.
IJB members were among the many local Palestinian activists and allies who called and emailed and met with Tim Lewis, the Liberal MP for Kitchener-Conestoga. And as Laura said, our collective efforts succeeded. Tim has publicly called for a two-way arms embargo and ceasefire. I know from Bryan May's previous actions that he could show the same moral courage.
I am Palestinian Canadian. My family still lives in Palestine and are certainly living through a genocide. Bryan May is my MP, and I have reached out to him as my representative multiple times over the last 8 months. All my attempts to reach him were ignored. We call him and email him, and he never responds. We have a protest outside his office here many times, demonstrating to demanding a two-way arms embargo, and he ignored us.
We are now in June, which marks 8 months of Israel's genocide, which has killed over 40,000 Palestinians in Gaza. A genocide that has been funded and backed by so-called Canada. Just 5 days ago, the fascist Israeli occupation forces rained hell onto the Nusayrat refugee camp, killing 40 displaced Palestinians, primarily women and children, sheltering in a UN refugee school. 2 days later, these same forces disguised themselves as humanitarian aid workers, infiltrated the camp, and massacred over 210 Palestinians. The Zionist entity's genocidal soldiers held humanitarian aid hostage, disguised themselves as aid workers, as refugees, and infiltrated a camp, a refugee camp, a war crime of all war crimes. The genocidal entity took advantage of hungry Palestinians who had lost everything: their home, their safety, their security, their peace, their happiness. Many of them, their entire families, many of them injured and maimed and disabled, living and foraging on the streets every day, gathering around for any morsels of food that they could get, only to be murdered in cold blood by people they thought were going to save them. Shame. Shame! It has become all too clear that our government and our officials will not act unless we make them act. As we watch a live stream genocide on our phones, our political leaders are aiding and abetting the horror we are witnessing. Shame! Shame! Our government would rather remain complicit in this genocide, funneling our tax dollars to the Zionist entity in the form of aid and military equipment to the genocidal entity. Our government's hands are dripping with the blood of more than 40,000 martyred Palestinians. They refuse to choose humanity or to cease complicity in genocide, let alone try to stop it. Shame! The Zionist entity started out by bombing cities, then bombing refugee tents, and now using humanitarian aid as a decoy against a starving population because so-called Canada and other governments have empowered them to do so. But we refuse to remain silent. We refuse to stand idly by as the Canadian state is aiding and abetting this genocide. I am here today as the Palestinian Youth Movement to echo the demand for Canada to impose an immediate immediate two-way arms embargo on the Zionist genocidal state of Israel. The Zionist entity has destroyed and murdered with no consequences. They have burned our people and rendered families into ashes, but they can never break the Palestinian people. With each martyr that ascends, our resolve and commitment to the struggle grows. We owe it to Gaza to keep escalating, to keep agitating, and not to let any amount of repression or intimidation deter us. That is the least that we can do. We will be here in the streets, on our campuses, in our classrooms, in our workplaces every day until Zionism is defeated and until the total liberation of Palestine from the river to the sea. Thank you.
We demand that our MPs take a stand and do everything in their power to end Canadian government's complicity in the genocide of Palestinians. So that starts by supporting the call for a full arms embargo on Israel.
Let's start by situating ourselves on stolen land. Cambridge is on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples, and Indigenous organizers have outlined the connection between colonialism here and colonialism globally. And so-called Canada, a settler colonial state, has a vested interest in supporting and maintaining colonial legitimacy around the world, and we have a responsibility to resist these forces here and abroad. Our campaign is growing every day. We are absolutely relentless. Every day we wake up and think about what we can do to put more pressure and think about how we can pressure these complicit MPs and end this government's complicity and end this genocide. Our organizing is working. In our region alone, we have gathered thousands of petition signatures, written hundreds of emails, and made hundreds of phone calls to our MPs. We have brought together local community organizations, churches, mosques, religious leaders, and other groups together. And as a result of our collective organizing, just last week, Liberal MP Tim Lewis broke rank and finally signed onto the Arms Embargo Now campaign. We're here today to tell Bryan May it's his turn. We actually brought a large copy of the MP Arms Embargo Now sign-on letter to make it really, really easy for him to sign. He's not here today, but we will leave it at his door and make it really easy for him to sign. So what we want to know is, what will it be, Bryan?
So dozens of members of parliament have already signed, including almost 20 Liberals. Here in our region, Tim Lewis and Mike Morris are calling on the Canadian government to abide by its obligation under international law and stop the weapons trade. It's time that Bryan does the same. The call for an arms embargo is gaining strength every day. Since the demand was published just over a month ago, it has been endorsed by over 400 groups, including Palestinian associations, labor unions, faith institutions, human rights organizations, environmental organizations, and community groups across Canada. They have all joined the call because Israel's ongoing assault on Gaza is catastrophic, with relentless massacres every day. And the Canadian government must immediately suspend all trade in arms and military technology with Israel.
Arms embargo now!
Arms embargo now! Arms embargo now! Arms embargo now! Arms embargo now! Arms embargo now! Arms embargo now!
Over 15,000 children have been killed in Gaza. Shame! I looked at the census numbers last night. That is the exact same number as every single child in the city of Cambridge under the age of 10. Shame! We're here at Bryan May's office because after 8 months of Israel's relentless bombing, he has still not supported the call for a full and immediate arms embargo on Israel. Shame! Shame! The confusing thing about Bryan is that his actions over the last 8 months don't match some of his words. So let me walk you through some of his statements. In November, back when Trudeau was still refusing to even say the word ceasefire, Bryan was actually one of the first Liberal MPs to call for a ceasefire and for more humanitarian aid into Gaza. In January, he expressed public support for the International Court of Justice against Israel, demanding respect for international law. In March, ahead of the NDP Opposition Day motion, Bryan told his constituents he would actually vote in favor of the motion before it got watered down by the rest of the Liberal Party. So my question I have for Bryan is, if you support international law, if you support a ceasefire, then why aren't you calling for an end to Canada's weapons trade with Israel? Shame!
Shame!
Shame. Instead of supporting justice, Bryan repeats Melanie Joly and Trudeau's lies about Canada's arms exports. In an Instagram post, he said word for word, Canada is not dealing arms or weapons to Israel or any military technology used for lethal weapons.
Lie.
Lie.
And went on to say that the government only approves permits for non-lethal equipment.
Liar.
Let me list some of that non-lethal equipment for you. Artillery round parts, aircraft engines, airstrike targeting gear, and aerospace components used in F-35 fighter jets, like landing gear, pieces of the engine, and segments of the wings. This means that Israeli F-35s, which are used to bomb innocent civilians in Gaza, are all equipped with Canadian components. Shame!
You know what else Bryan May is doing instead of signing the Arms Embargo Now letter? 2 weeks ago, he attended CanSec, which is Canada's largest defense and security trade show.
Shame!
This trade show allows Canada to browse through military technology from Israel and other countries, and features weapons and technology that have been battle-tested and combat-proven on Palestinians.
Shame!
Canada is funding Israel's atrocities by buying over $43 million in Israeli missiles, using our tax dollars and providing profits to the Israeli arms industry. Shame!
Shame!
MP Bryan May has no issue mingling with war profiteers, but balks at meeting with his concerned constituents. Shame!
Shame!